Now, we have this question here. It is a question from a paper that is CIFA April 2024, question number 24. This question here is a very interesting one, ladies and gentlemen, and I would want us to get the details. I would want us to understand what the examiner really wants us to do. It is a very simple question. The only thing is that the examiner is just trying to twist and turn just to make it difficult and to make your life difficult. But then we are here to, to unlock all those tricks that the examiner is trying to employ in this case. Now, this question is about loan amortization, but it is not your usual loan amortization that you are used to. Why am I saying that? It is because the examiner is bringing on board certain concepts and certain adjustments. Number one is, whenever you secure a loan, if you are a borrower, yeah, and this loan, you agree on the monthly installments to remit. And we know up to this point, we know what is an installment. An installment, these are the payments that you make, at the agreed timelines, at the agreed frequencies, following agreed terms in terms of interest to be repaid back and the total period that you need to take with this loan to fully pay back or to fully amortize it. Now, these installments that we normally pay, usually in the normal loan amortization, it is a constant amount. And up to this point in time, we know that an installment has two elements. An installment has the element of interest, and it also has an element of, the principal. So whenever you pay a loan, you are paying interest part of it, and again, you are also reducing the loan amount, the principal loan amount. It is part of that installment. Now, in this question here, this installment is not constant throughout the loan period. It is going to change at some point, and that is the trick. That is the trick number one that this examiner is bringing on board. The number two twist that the examiner has brought on board here is that at some point, the interest rate of this loan is going to change, right? So that is another interesting twist. Now, let us read this question and get to understand how to go about it whenever such turns and twists are brought on board. Now, Joanne Akinyi is a financial analyst who has approached you to analyze a client's loan structure with the following information. Initial loan amount is 5.7 million. You can see it there. Rate of interest is 12.5% per annum. That is the annual rate. Period is 10 years, payable monthly in arrears. Now, this is the basic information. And as a student who understands what we are just about to do, a loan amortization, and you've done it before, you need to already pick certain things here to guide you. What am I talking about? Now, loan amount is okay, 5.7 million. I want you to look at the rate of interest given. It is given per annum. It is a per annum, an annual rate, 12.5%. When we come to part 3, note 3 there, we are told period is 10 years and payable monthly in arrears. Payable monthly in arrears. There are two things I would want us to understand from that statement alone. Now, the frequency of payment of this loan. The loan is being paid monthly. The frequency is monthly. When you talk about monthly, and we look at the frequency dynamics that normally you can meet, usually you meet in certain situations, you can be told it is payable monthly, like in this case. It is payable semi-annually. Yes, that is also a language that examiners often use. They can also tell you it is paid quarterly, like that, quarterly. They can also say it is paid annually. So these are frequencies that at one point or the other you will always meet. Then we've also read it is monthly in arrears. When you talk of arrears, when you pay something in arrears, this one you pay at the end of that period, depending on the period that the examiner is telling you. So in this case, it is monthly, meaning we pay at the end of every month, right? Now, if they say, for example, you pay or you remit the payment in advance, then you pay at the start of the period. In layman's language, to make you understand it, advance and in arrears means when you pay at the end, there are certain bills that you normally say they are postpaid. For example, electricity bill, you pay after you've used it, right? Leave alone this other arrangement where you load your tokens is when you start using. I'm talking about the post-paid billing system. You pay after, you are being charged after you've already used the service. That is payment in arrears. Advance, a good example that we can use for all of us to understand is, for example, rent. If you are you are paying some rent. Rent normally you pay in advance. You pay at the start of the month. If you're paying your rent annually, you will pay at the start of the year. You've not already used it up, no. You've not stayed in that, establishment, even if it is your house where you stay. But you pay that rent whenever you start every month, whenever you start every year, or whatever frequency in which you remit your rent payments. So, after understanding this simple language here, let us now go back to the frequency. Now, when you talk about frequencies, these just mean the number of times you are required to remit these payments in a year. The number of times you are required to remit the payments in 1 year. Now, when you talk about monthly, the best approach for you to always remember in this case is monthly. Ask yourself, how many months do we have in a year? And we all know we have 12 months in a year. So that is the frequency of making the payments. 12 times in a year because you are remitting the payment monthly after the end of every month. Now, when you talk about semi-annually, then it means you are remitting the payments 2 times in a year. Semi-annually. Semi means two. Semi means two. So semi-annually means you are remitting the payments 2 times in a year. That is the frequency. Now, let's come to the third case scenario. Quarterly. Quarterly. What is the frequency? In this case, when you're told that payable quarterly, quarterly in arrears, in case, if the examiner used that language, for example, in this our case, it is payable monthly in arrears, but the examiner instead used payable quarterly, quarterly in arrears. How do you approach it? Now, the frequency when you talk about quarterly is, ask yourself, how many quarters do we have in a year? How many quarters do we have in a year? Now, quarters that we have in a year are four. Yeah, we have 4 quarters in a year. From January to March, that is quarter one. Yeah, then from April to June, that is quarter two. July to September, quarter three. October to December is quarter four. So we have how many quarters? 4 quarters in a year. That is the frequency in case you come across this term, payable quarterly in arrears. Then now you know the frequency in 1 year are four. When you talk about annually, then it means you are remitting the payments just once in a year. Once in a year. I hope we've understood all those frequencies and the ways in which we can usually beat them. These are the most common ways. In case you find an examiner going to an extent which is a bit rare of, you are required to remit the payments daily. You are required to remit the payments daily. Now you just ask yourself, how many days do we have in a year? And in that case, where the examiner goes to an extent of bringing the payments to the daily format, in most cases, the examiner will guide you whether you are to use 366, 360, or 365 days in a year. So you go by what the examiner is giving you. So they will often guide you on that part. And you use the number of days that the examiner presents to you to represent the number of days in a year. Just use it the way the examiner will bring it to you. Though this case is usually a bit rare because that would mean your amortization schedule will be too long. Yeah. So after understanding this, it is good to understand the concepts, understand the language. After you've understood the language, your life will be easy. Now let's move and continue reading. Let's move and continue reading. Additional information number one. An additional amount of 550,000 is repaid with the 20th installment and the monthly installment recomputed to fully pay the loan balance in the initially agreed period. Now, just by reading that additional information one, we are able to pick up something. It starts by saying an additional amount. Why do they say additional amount? It is because when you are doing your loan amortization, when you are amortizing any loan amount, you will agree on the installments to be paid for the agreed period, right? For the agreed period. So I want us to start straight away yeah, by coming up with the structure of the loan and getting to see the picture, just using the same information that the examiner has given us. Because now we are starting to compute, we are starting to solve this problem that we have. So I want to come here and just say solution. Solution. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to do this together as I do it from my end. It is good for you to also try it on your end so that you understand how this thing is done. Whenever you practice on your own, you get to understand it better, right? Good. So, what information have we been given by the examiner? We've been given loan amount. Loan amount. Now, what loan are we talking about? We are told the initial loan amount is 5.7 million. So I will just come here and write 5.7 million like that. 5.7 million. I hope that my figure is correct. Okay, this is more than 5.7 million. 5,700,000, 5,700,000 like that. So let me just remove the decimal places so that I have my whole numbers like that. Good. So that is the loan amount. Then we've also been told rate of interest is 12.5% per annum. So interest is a per annum rate. Interest is per annum rate. And how much is it? 12.5% per annum. 12.5% per annum. It is 13 because I made my figures to be in whole numbers, but let us just make it 12.5%. You are told it is 12.5% like that. 12.5%. Let me just bring the percentage so that someone does not get confused. 12.5%. We can even let the 12.5% be in terms of decimal places, in terms of in decimals instead of in percentage, 12.5%. But let me leave it as percentage so that you can be able to see it well. Then what is the loan period? Period we are given. The period is 10 years. Period is 10 years. 10 years. That is the information given by the examiner. Now, with that, I want to challenge you. Look at the frequency of repayment of this loan. The frequency, I've given you the matrices here that are possibly the languages that you will often meet. Now, we are told the period is 10 years payable monthly, payable monthly, payable monthly. So the frequency is monthly. That means in 1 year, how many times are you required to remit the payments of this loan? You are required to remit it 12 times. You see the frequency here? That is now the route we are taking. You are paying the loan monthly. That means even the interest rate, we are going to convert it to a monthly rate. We are going to convert the interest to monthly rate. So we come here and make sure we work with like terms. So monthly interest rate. What is the monthly interest rate? The monthly interest rate. Now, when you talk about monthly interest rate, just ask yourself, how many months do you have in a year? We've already talked about it up there. We have 12 months. So we pick the annual rate that we've been given, 12.5. We divide by 12. And we have 0.01 and all that. The decimal places are so many. Let me just reduce the number of decimal places. Let me have, for example, to 3 decimal places. 3 decimal places like that. Is it 3 or 2? Let me just make it 3 is okay. So that is the monthly interest rate, 0.010. That is the monthly interest rate by just dividing the annual rate by 12. That's how we've gotten the monthly rate, because you want to work with like terms. Then, after getting our monthly interest rate, we also check what is the period. We were given period in years. Remember, the examiner said the period of the loan is 10 years. But now, because we are working our figures in monthly fashion, we have also to ensure that the period is in months. Like terms, we are working in like terms. You cannot work with monthly rate, but then the period remains in years. You will confuse yourself. It is better, it is always advised that you work with like terms. Now, how do we convert 10 years to months? We know 1 year has 12 months. Now that we have 10 years, it is very simple. We just pick 10 years, then we ask ourselves, how many months do we have in a year? We all have agreed that it is 12. So just multiply that by 12 months, and we have 120 months. That is the period of the loan. So you've secured a loan of 5.7 million. Your monthly rate is 0.01. That is the monthly interest rate. We know what interest is. Interest is the cost of borrowing. Sometimes in the financial statements, they will use the term finance cost. But in terms of loan, when we are doing these loan schedules, they bring the language interest rate, just basically to ensure that you understand what we're talking about. Period is 120. That is the number of months in 10 years. Now, how do we structure our schedule of amortizing the loan? The format remains the same. Nothing changes. Nothing changes in our format. And that's why I usually insist that just get the concept, get the format, understand the skeleton. All these other additional informations, examiners will always play around with them. Sometimes they twist, they use a different language, they can change the interest rate, they can change the loan amount, but the concept behind amortizing any loan remains the same. So I would want us to put down the same format that we already know. So what format am I talking about? Normally, we have period like that. We have period like that. Then there is just some twist and some adjustment that I would want us to bring on board in this our schedule. Now, given note 1 that we've just read, we've been told that an additional amount of 550,000 is repaid with the 20th installment, and the monthly installment recomputed to fully pay the loan balance in the initially agreed period. Now, besides the installment that is agreed, like you know very well that with the information we already have, we can compute the installment to be repaid. If it is to remain constant, which usually is the case, we can compute the installment using the PMT function in Excel. Now, how do you compute the installment? This is something we already know. Yeah, we know this is where you use the PMT function. So we'll just say equal PMT like that. I pick the rate. Which rate am I picking? The monthly rate. Then number of periods, period we've already converted, that is 120 months. Present value is the loan amount, that is 5.7 million. Yeah. Then whenever you see any Excel functionality and anything given in brackets within the formula, anything given in bracket within the formula, it means it is not compulsory. You can either fill it up or leave it. Like now in this case, we have future value. You see the FV, it is in parentheses. Now, if it is closed in a bracket and closed in a bracket, it is not necessary. It is not mandatory. You can opt to just leave it out, or you can fill it, all of it. It's okay. So in our case, we can just leave it aside. Let me just put it at that. I don't have even to close that bracket because Excel will do that for me. So I will just confirm by clicking on Control Enter, and we have our installment. I know someone is asking, why is it coming as a negative? It's because any PMT function, PMT in full is payment. Any payment is a cash outflow. That is how Excel is built. That is how Excel is built, to understand a payment as an outflow. Yeah, a payment is an outflow. That's why normally it comes with a negative. So for you to have your figures in positive, normally it's advised that you put a negative sign after the equal sign, or after the loan amount, or before the loan amount. For example, in the formula we have the present value. See the present value? You can introduce your negative here when you're bringing on board the loan amount, or you can just put negative immediately after the equal sign so that you cancel out that negative value. And there you have your 83 for 34. Do not worry about the currency. Currency, you can always, change. You can either include any currency or work with that currency. How do you do it? Just click on that cell where you have your figure and the currency shown. Come to the formatting section. Here you can see the dollar sign is here. Where the dollar sign is the currency. And you can even see the name box here of the format that we have is showing currency. So you can just go and click on the drop down, and then come to more number formats. Then you can see the currencies there. Then go to symbol. Then do away with the currency by saying none, confirm, and your currency is gone like that. You can choose any currency that you'll find in the range of currencies given in Excel. Good. Now, usually this is the case. This is how we compute the installments. But in this question here, there is something that is twisted a bit. What is it? This will not be constant throughout the period. The installments to be repaid, there is an enhancement, there is an additional amount that will be added on top of the 83 for 34. They will remit an additional amount here of 550. At what point? With the 20th installment. We've already known we are paying how many installments? 120. That is the number of period. So let's reach up to the 20th installment and see how we are bringing on board the 550. So this was just to remind you, My computation of this installment is just to remind you of what we've done before, and so that we get to, to connect how the twist is coming in from the usual computation that we already know. So I will leave this installment at this point, but I will highlight it in yellow because I want you to understand that concept at that point. Now, because of that, I want us to introduce another column. After period, we now bring on board balance brought down. What is the balance brought down of this loan? At the end of every period, at the start of every period, what balance are you bringing down? Then the next column I want us to bring on board is additional loan. In case you borrow a loan from a bank or from any financial institution or a circle or anywhere you're given a loan, and at some point you are remitting your repayments, but you realize you need a loan top up. For those of us who take loans from circles, we know this thing is usually happening, or even from any financial institution. You can repay back, you can be repaying back your loan, but then you are being told at some point after you've repaid back to a certain level, you are able to get a top up of that loan. So whenever a top up of the loan comes in, it will affect your principal loan amount. And when it affects your principal loan amount, then it means everything will change. The interest charge, the interest that you remit will change because the loan amount has changed. Then again, the principal that you remit as part of the installment is also going to change because the principal loan amount has changed. So we are going to see how those twists and those adjustments are coming here, and how do you handle them. So that's why we are bringing the column of additional loan in case you add or maybe you secure more loans. Then if you add the balance brought down and additional loan, that will give you the beginning loan amount. Beginning loan amount, like that. That is the next column. Then with the beginning loan amount, then now you start asking yourself, what am I repaying back? What am I repaying back? Now, if I can ask us to look at additional information number 2, there is something interesting that I would want us to pinpoint there. The rate of interest is adjusted to 13.8% per annum with effect from the end of the 4th year. Are we seeing that, ladies and gentlemen? The rate of interest is adjusted to 13.8% per annum with effect from the end of the 4th year, right? So now you can see that I computed, you see the highlighting in yellow. I highlighted it so that you see. Now, you are given the rate of interest as 12.5% per annum. We converted that rate of interest to a monthly interest rate, of which we got the 0.010. Now, you are being told in note number 2 that the interest rate will not be constant. It is going to change at the end of the 4th year. Now, you know that every year has 12 months. So at the end of the 4th year, that means if you have 4 years and you want to know the number of months in 4 years, you just multiply 4 by 12. That is at the end of the 48th month. At the end of 48 months, the rate of interest is going to change. It is no longer going to be constant. And whenever the rate of interest changes, it will change the dynamics of the loan. It is going to change the installment to be repaid from that point moving forward. Yeah. And then it is also when interest is affected, then the principal to be repaid is also affected because the loan amount has been affected. You get that? The interest rate is going to change at that point. So that brings us something. If the interest rate is not going to remain constant, the 12.5 per annum or 0.01 per month, if it is not going to remain constant, then it is only fair. It is only, it requires us now to introduce another column, which is not usually the case in our normal amortization schedules. But in this case, to make our work easy and for easy understandability, let us bring on board a column of interest rate. Interest rate like that, because it is not constant throughout the loan period. It is going to change at some point. And for us to see the change clearly, we bring on board that column. Then that is now when we go to the installment. That is installment, and I just mentioned to you a short while ago what are the elements of an installment. An installment has interest and principal. Interest and principal. Those are the elements that make our installment. Our installment. Now, let me bring on board interest. So I type the interest. That is the first element of our installment. Then principal. Principal amount. Principal amount. Principal amount. Like that. Then what else? What else? After that, we come to this other part. Again, we go back to note 1. An additional amount of 550 is repaid with the 20th installment. So you see, we will be having our installments here. Now, on the 20th installment, on top of the installment that you are going to pay, you are also going to bring on board in some additional amount to reduce further the loan amount. Now, that means we have to introduce another column here called additional payment. Additional payment column. Then after remitting your additional payment, then you'll ask yourself, what is the ending balance of the loan? Ending balance of the loan, like that. Now, I hope that we have seen how we are coming up with these headings. We are just laying the ground. Now, under period, we look at the number of periods to repay back the loan. We've already completed it up here. It is 120 months. So what do we do, good people? Very simple. We come and list our period here. Now, I want to bring to you two approaches. There are those people who will start listing the loan period from 0. You know, 0 means what? 0 is at the point when you are securing the loan. And at that point in time, you do not have any balance brought down. So if you start with 0, that means you do not have any balance brought down. That is period 0. You also do not have any additional loan because that is the point you are starting to secure your loan. That is the start, period 0. So period 0, there is no additional loan. There is no opening balance of the loan. Then the beginning loan amount, you do not have any beginning loan amount. Yeah, because your balance brought down is 0, additional is 0. So beginning is also 0. Interest rate at that point will be okay, 12.5%. But remember, we are dealing with period in months. So we do not bring 12.5%, but I want to refer to the monthly rate. I want to refer to the monthly rate like that. We can leave it in decimals or convert it into percentage so that you see it well. Let me just increase the number of decimal places and you see it is 1.04%. That is the monthly rate. Installment will be 0 because we don't have any loan amount to pay installment on at period 0. Because this is from the start. Remember, we are remitting our payments from the start.